Welcome back and thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to go over how to take your body measurements properly. So the biggest thing you want to know is that you're being consistent and precise. So doing it the same way every time. So really quick, it's nice to have a little tracker, which in my tips, tricks, and recipe book, you have a copy of that tracker. You can also get a free downloadable copy on my website, www.fitnesscoaching.ca. So first of all, let's start with the chest one. So usually inches, but you also get centimeters, so you can do whichever you like. Inches is usually the pretty generic way, but centimeters you might see more changes because it's a smaller measurement. So first of all, chest. You want to go nipple line. It's often good to use a mirror so you can see that you're being level. So what I often do is we'll kind of here, and then we're going to cross over the nipple line gently, and you want to make sure that it's not folded anywhere and that it's level. So right there, and then as close to when it crosses over, as close to that line as possible. And you don't want to pull it too tight. You don't want it to be too loose. You want it to be just nice and snug. And if you're taking someone else's measurements, you want to make sure that they're breathing naturally. You don't want to be holding your breath or anything like that. So your chest is nipple line. Some people will also go from the top of the armpit, but I feel like the nipple line is the same all the time. It's easy to find. And you can just kind of like so, kind of bring it up, make sure it's level, and then cross it over. Nice and snug, but not too tight. Same thing with the waist. So the waist is usually the smallest point in the midsection, which is normally your lowest rib as well. So right along here, or if you want to use the belly button as a reference, you can as well. But again, you want it to kind of cross over, and sometimes just holding it for a couple times. So also making sure it's nice and level. A couple just normal breaths so that you know it's an accurate reading. And again, just crossing over so you have the end, and then the closest line, you can go up to 1/4 of an inch. And then for hips, you want to find the largest spot. So sometimes taking a couple measurements, moving it around, again, using a mirror to make sure it's level and nice and snug. So that's the largest measurement for myself, so I know that that's the right spot. Now, when we get into other areas like the biceps, you want it to be approximately in the middle. It is good to, from the shoulder bone up top, so the acromion process, down to the elbow. You can measure the halfway point. And this one can be tricky to do on your own, so you might want to ask somebody to help you. But if you don't have that help, what I will often do is kind of let it fall over and then spin it around. So that can be super tricky. And then often you might see flexed or unflexed, relaxed or flexed. Whatever you do, just be consistent with it. But again, you want to make sure it's level. I can feel that it's not level. That's folding down a little bit. And just adjusting there so it's snug. Perfect. And then if you want to do relaxed and flexed, you can do both and record it separately. Right and left side, you can do them differently. If you're looking for more detail and specific, you can do both, and you can do flexed and relaxed. If you're just trying to get a general idea of your circumferences, then one side is fine. It's good, but just make sure you're always doing the same side. So if you're doing the right side, always do the right side. Now down to the thigh. What you want to do is make sure it's accurate and in the same spot every time. I do recommend measuring the midpoint for this. So if you lift your leg up to 90 degrees, that's where your hip bone is, and the top of your patella, so the top of your kneecap, you want to measure the midway. So I'm about 15 inches, so I would half that. So 7.5 inches is going to be that halfway point. So right here, If you have like an eyeliner pencil or something like that, you can just mark it. And then same thing, you're gonna come around and let it cross over. Often taking 2 or 3 measurements and taking the average of the 3 is how you can be super accurate. So I highly recommend doing that. And then for the calf, what you want to do is find something to rest your leg on. I'll use my handy chair here. And then the widest part of your calf. So this can be deceiving because on the outside, it might look like it's further down here, but up here you have a very thick muscle. So that part of the calf is the thickest. So you want to go a little higher up than where you think. And again, take 2 to 3 measurements and then average them out. And that's how you know you're going to be super accurate. Now, the best thing to do is have a buddy, have someone that can do the measurements for you. So I will also show you what that will look like. So for doing measurements on other people, it is obviously so much easier, but you want to make sure that you're still being consistent. So if the same person is doing the measurements all the time, that's definitely best. So for chest, we're going to do arms up. And just like before, we're going to do the nipple line. And then as the other person, so I'll get you to turn this way for me. So what you can do is make sure that it stays level. So I'm going to just cross it. And then I can actually see that I'm staying level and then come around. And then where the edge of the tape is where you're going to measure. So when this crosses over, whatever line is closest to the end of the measuring tape is what you're going to use for that measurement. Again, taking 3 measurements and then getting the average so you can be as accurate as possible. Now for the waist, again, you want to find the smallest point in the waist. So a lot of time that's going to be kind of the lower rib area. Same thing, you want to make sure it's level, and then the edge of the tape, wherever the closest line is to that. And then for hips, we don't want it to be awkward. Let's just be honest how it can be. So bringing the tape around so it's nice and level. And then from the side, we're going to find, usually just by eyeballing it, you can tell where the widest point is. And then again, just holding that nice and snug to find the measurement of the hips. So the widest point in the hips. Now for the bicep, you can do flexed or relaxed, and you always want to do the same side. So if you're doing the right side, always do the right side for all of your measurements. So the right bicep, we're going to bring the arm up, so 90 degrees. And then you just want to make sure it's in that middle area. You can measure the midpoint to be super accurate, but we're just going to go right in the middle, same thing. And then they can do flexed. And then if you're doing flexed, you want to make sure you're measuring the peak of the bicep. So again, the biggest point in the bicep for that. And you can measure flexed and relaxed. If you want more detail, you can always do both sides. But usually just the one side is fine. Just always do the same side. There can be some differences from right to left, sometimes up to 1/2 inch. Now for the thigh, we want them to flex their hip, so lifting their leg up, and we're going to find where that hip bone is. So you can relax from the hip bone. Again, we're going to measure to the top of the patella, the kneecap, and we're going to find that middle point. So 16, so 8. And then if they can go in a wider stance, so wider stance, please. And then same thing from the outside, and then making sure it's level. Now for the calf, you want them to put their leg up so that their knee is bent at about 90 degrees or so, just so that they're not flexing the calf. And then same thing, it's going to be the widest point. And from this angle, sometimes it's harder to tell, but what we're going to do is it's usually a bit higher up, but let's see. So we just kind of move it around to take different measurements. So that's actually the wider spot. That's what we're going to use for the calf measurement. Again, by taking 3 measurements and finding the average, you're going to have a lot more accuracy. So again, You can get the free downloadable trackers on my website, and they're also in the book. So you can go to www.fitnesscoaching.ca to download your free trackers.